You want this so you can afford this. But the real question is, can you afford this? Okay, illustration time. Stay with me. I need a new coffee mug. I want the greatest mug ever. But unfortunately, there's no price listed. Damn! Would you ever buy anything without knowing the price? No, but most of us do when it comes to the pursuit of wealth. When you imagine wealth, what comes to mind? Nice houses, nice cars, trips around the world. Okay, and I get that. I get all the material things, but what are you actually looking for? You're looking for happiness. We want to earn enough money to live our lives on our terms because we want to be happy. A certain amount of money is necessary for things like food, shelter, water, clothing. But would you be happy if only your basic needs were met? No, probably not. But why? Where is your happiness line? How much money is enough money? Now, let me go ahead and say up front, this video is not intended to demonize money. There is nothing wrong with working hard, earning a good living, and supporting your family. But to most of us, the cost of pursuing wealth is invisible until we pay it ourselves. And the real cost, it might surprise you. There's a widely referenced study from back in 2010 from these guys, Nobel Prize-winning economists Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton. They found that in the United States, you can leave now. They found that in the United States, emotional well-being tends to plateau at a household annual income of around $75,000. Now, adjusting for inflation in 2023, that's about $105,000. Now, there's one thing that this study really didn't acknowledge, and that's your location. So, for example, if you live in New York City, $105,000 is very different there than it is in rural Louisiana, where I'm at. But don't get too hung up on the specific numbers. That's not why I referenced this study. You can determine your own personal well-being number once you start building your income. It might be $40,000 a year, it might be $6 million a year. That's an entirely personal number, and I'm not going to try to set it for you. Instead, I want to focus on the part of their study where they reference a thing called the hedonic treadmill. This theory implies that the pursuit of material gains for happiness just leads to the illusion of progress, like running on a treadmill. Back before my self-employment days, I once got a huge raise at work, and I was so stoked about it. Then life happened. I made a few purchases that I probably shouldn't have made, and then I just absorbed the rest of it into my daily life. And before you knew it, I was back in the same place I was before I ever got the raise. My new income level just became my new normal. And as we chase more and more, thinking that more will make us happy, our happiness levels just keep adjusting with each step up the wealth ladder. Oh, and something else happens too. As we begin to accumulate wealth, our social comparisons also begin to change. Suddenly, we're not just comparing ourselves to friends and family. Now we're looking at the millionaires and the billionaires with their Lamborghinis and their yachts and their mansions. And that comparison game, that's a game you cannot win because there will always be somebody with more than you. And this is going to have the exact opposite effect on our life happiness level. Instead of creating happiness, this could be a huge source of life dissatisfaction. And if that's not enough, here's another way that money can affect your happiness levels. Oh, and by the way, this video is not all gloom and doom. I promise you, there's good news at the end. Stick around. Okay, so let's imagine that you're a huge watch fan and you've worked your butt off and saved for 5 years to buy a Rolex. This Rolex is your pride and joy for a while. Like my increased income, the joy of this purchase, it will end too. And eventually, it will just be your watch. Now, imagine that you didn't have to save for this Rolex. Imagine that you have this Rolex Genie that gives you unlimited access to Rolex watches. Yours breaks? So what? Here's a new one. Want a different style? No problem. Here you go. Want it in 12 different colors? Your wish is my command. There you are. If you could get a Rolex anytime for any reason with no financial burden connected to it whatsoever, how much value would that Rolex have to you? None. Absolutely zero. This example might sound like silly or trivial, but it does highlight a very critical point. When wealth removes the appreciation of effort or the joy of achievement, even luxuries feel empty. I really can literally already hear the arguments in the comment section on this one. Wealth doesn't remove the joy and appreciation of the effort or achievement. I get that from the process of making the money, and the stuff that I can buy with it, well, that's just a byproduct of my effort. Absolutely, sure, I get it, and I can relate with that. I love taking an idea and turning it into a moneymaker. Really love it. To me, it's a game, but that game also has a cost. And now that we've discussed the illusion that money equals happiness, let's dive into the actual cost of the game. Introducing George. George has a wife and 2 school-aged kids. He's a successful lawyer, real estate investor, and he also owns a couple of businesses on the side. George is absolutely killing it at the money game. And even though he has a small staff to help him, he still works about 80 hours a week between all of his assets. It's not uncommon for George to miss family events like a kid's soccer game or a weekend getaway or dinner and a movie at home. The cost of George's success? His relationship with his wife and kids. Now, let's also not overlook the mental health aspect. Running a business, much less multiple businesses, is stressful on its own. So you have the stress from running multiple businesses, and then you have your relationship between your wife and kids, which is probably going to have some tension with all of the time that you're out. The stress of all of those things combined, that's heavy. That's a cost. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's impossible to build wealth and manage a healthy home and social life. I'm not saying that at all. It's definitely possible. People do it every day. But there will be a cost to maintaining both. And the cost can be shifted around, but there's still a cost. So if you're spending all of your time and energy chasing wealth and you manage to make time to keep a healthy relationship between your spouse and your kids, that's great. What are you giving up for that? No exercise, which is health, less sleep, which is health. So basically health. You have to choose. There is a balance somewhere in that mix, and everybody's balance is going to be different. Everyone can handle different levels of everything. So there's no way for me to say, this is what you should do. You have to determine that for yourself. But know that you cannot do it all, and there will be a cost. It's up to you to determine if you can afford that cost. If you can't do it all, what will you sacrifice? That's your cost. Wealth is an incredibly helpful tool, but it alone will not guarantee a happy or fulfilling life. So, before you dedicate yourself to the chase, ask yourself one question. Is this really bringing me closer to happiness, or is it just another step on the treadmill? And after all this self-reflection, maybe you realize it's not actually about the balance in your bank account, and it's more about the balance you find in life. I'm glad that I saw the price tag in time. I hope you do too. True wealth might already be right in front of you. Don't overlook it.